Treasurer, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Chris. Good to be with you.
Would you regard today's Treasurers' meeting as constructive?
Absolutely. It went for more than 2 hours in length. We discussed a range of issues where we can cooperate, like skills reform, like mental health reform, cutting red tape, including for our charities. And we also discussed the state of the economy with a briefing from the Governor of the Reserve Bank, and the outlook from him was positive, just as we've seen in recent economic data, be it around the labour market or in terms of economic growth. It's both been a positive message about Australia's economic recovery.
Let's start with that. Now, we've seen a spike in inflation in the US overnight. What did the Reserve Bank Governor indicate to you and the other Treasurers about the likelihood of interest rates rising?
Well, as the Governor of the Reserve Bank has said publicly many times, he's not in the position where he's looking at higher interest rates. What he is doing is supporting our economic recovery, and that has been through a very accommodative monetary policy. And as you know, fiscal policy has also been very accommodative. So the Reserve Bank has left their interest rates on hold for some time. We've got interest rates at historic low levels. That's obviously fueling increased demand across the housing market, but also across the broader economy. But it's really been fiscal policy, government economic support that's done the bulk of the heavy lifting during this crisis, and it's made a real difference because the unemployment rate has come down to 5.5%, and we've avoided that economic abyss, that economic cliff that many saw last year, where they thought that the unemployment rate could reach as high as 15%, which would have meant more than 2 million unemployed. Right now, we've got a fraction of that, and as a result, we've helped save a generation of Australians from long-term unemployment.
And I guess that news during the week about the strength of the AAA credit rating is good news for investors.
Yeah. Very good news. Standard & Poor's upgraded Australia's economic outlook. We're one of only 9 countries, Chris, that have a AAA credit rating from the 3 leading rating agencies, and only a small number actually received an upgrade this year, of which Australia is one. So that is very positive. It reduces the cost of borrowing for governments and ultimately for banks, and therefore to households as well. But it does reflect the strength and the resilience of the Australian economy. Standard & Poor's said in their report that the response from government here in Australia had been swift and decisive on both the health and the economic front, and that the recovery had happened stronger and faster than initially expected. And that's very consistent with what the government has been saying as well.
Did the Victorian Treasurer today ask national taxpayers to prop up more lockdowns, or did you tell them to go and jump?
Well, as you know, we are seeking to support Victorians through these very difficult times, and unfortunately Victoria has been subject to 4 lockdowns, more than any other state. If you take out that initial period where there was a nationwide lockdown, Victorians have been subject to lockdowns for more than 140 days, yet the average across the other states and territories has been just 6 days. Some kids have been out of school in Victoria for more than 22 weeks. That's more than half the academic year, whereas in the Northern Territory they haven't been out of school at all, or in South Australia for a week. And so the situation in Victoria has been very, very different to the rest of the country. That's very unfortunate. And Victorians are asking themselves, why us? It's the same quarantine system, it's the same virus, it's the same technology like QR codes that is available. Indeed, it's the same federal government across the whole country, yet why has Victoria been subject to so many days of lockdown?
Can I ask you a little bit about school there? You wrote a really intriguing piece earlier on in the week about the impediment of locking down and putting the responsibility on parents to homeschool. Now, that's if the parents aren't working, and we know that there are so many parents with, double incomes. Some of them are doing 2-3 jobs. You can't expect parents to all of a sudden become a teacher. That whole business about keeping kids at home is so destructive, isn't it?
Well, kids need to be in school and they need to be there not just to learn but to interact with their teachers and with their friends. And you hear from the medical experts, and they say very openly that it's the most disadvantaged homes, the most disadvantaged kids, those who don't necessarily have English as their first language, that can be paying a higher price for these lockdowns and for being out of school. It's not just that the kids are falling behind, and in Victoria, the state government has acknowledged that by deploying some nearly 6,000 tutors across some 1,800 schools in order to help kids catch up. They estimate that around 200,000 kids have fallen behind. At the same time, though, there's the mental health impacts. We've seen an increase, according to the medical experts, in terms of eating disorders, particularly among young girls. We've seen increased appearances at emergency departments. We've seen more anxiety, more depression. Tragically, it's had an impact on suicide as well. These are the real life consequences of these lockdowns, and that's why closing schools must be done only as a last resort. And I have to tell you, Chris, that I wrote that article not as the Treasurer, not as a politician, but as a parent. And as a parent who has spent more days away from home than at home over the course of COVID. And as a parent who hasn't done the heavy lifting with home schooling, or indeed working from home. That's been done by my wife. And she's never complained, like so many other Victorians. She just got on with obeying the rules and making the best out of a difficult situation. But what I'm really concerned about is the long-term consequences on young people's health and on their education of having our schools closed. And so it was welcome that today kids eventually got back to school.
Yeah. Finally, one quick one. The 6 Collins-class submarines, they're getting a $10 billion upgrade. Is this in a direct response to the threat of security from China?
Well, it's about maintaining our capability, and the first responsibility of government is to ensure the nation's national security and that of its citizens. That's why when we came to government, we inherited a pretty terrible set of books when it came to defence spending. As you know, it fell under Labor to its lowest percentage of GDP since 1938. We elevated that defence spending from 1.56% of GDP to above 2%. And that is ensuring that we have the capability to respond to whatever those threats may be. It's not about a particular country, it's about ensuring that our nation is prepared and that we have the right resources and the capability at our disposal. And therefore it's a form of insurance, and it's served Australia very well in the past and will continue to serve Australia well into the future, that approach to defence and defence spending.
I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.